Hey guys, welcome into my video today. Today I want to go over some of the new Flower Beauty releases, and a lot of these seem like dupes to me. Obviously we know that the Charlotte Tilbury kind of packaging on her Beauty Light wands has become very popular right now, so Flower Beauty did release the liquid highlighter and now the liquid contour, and I got my hands on it at my local CVS. A lot of new primers, a couple of other new releases, but those are the main focus that I want to go over in today's video. So let's just hop right into it. So this is the Flower Beauty Skin Smoothie Radiant Glow Primer. I think this is a dupe for Coconut Skin Smoothie Priming Moisturizer. Right away when I heard the name of this, I thought, okay, this must be a dupe for this one from First Aid Beauty. I absolutely love this one. It's really made for sensitive skin. It's very hydrating. Overall, I just really love First Aid Beauty products. She did launch 3 different versions of this. So there's the matte version of this and then the Hydro Pop version. Aside from the name being very similar, the first thing that I noticed is that it's very pink in color, and the one from First Aid Beauty also has a pink hue to it. The one from Flower Beauty is a little bit more pink in tone than the one from First Aid Beauty. They're not exact dupes in terms of formula. The Flower Beauty is much lighter weight, and the First Aid Beauty one is definitely more thick in consistency. I'd say overall though, they're very similar in the way that they hydrate your skin. I have tried this one time before. Next ones are the Lowlight Contour Wands. These were a little bit difficult to find. They're sold out on Ulta, but at my local CVS yesterday had 1 shade of each. So I did pick up the light, then medium, and one in deep. And the reason that I picked them up in all these 3 shades is because I felt like for a contour wand, this was definitely very, very light and almost looked more like a bronzer than a contour wand. And I haven't swatched these yet. And these kinds of packaging right now are becoming very popular. Tarte has come out with one, but I think that they are ultimately duping the Charlotte Tilbury contour wand. And the reason that I wanted to pick up the deep one was because I think it was more similar in tone to the Charlotte Tilbury one. And the Charlotte may even be more deep and more neutral. So I thought we could swatch all of these against the Charlotte. They have the same exact applicator with a twist open top. There is the one in light, there is the medium, and there is the one in deep. So the light one actually does look like a pretty neutral tone for light skin tones, but the one that's medium has a lot of warmth to it, and the deep one actually pulls a little bit more neutral again. Here is the one from Charlotte Tilbury in Fair. So it's much more similar to the deep shade in the Flower Beauty Liquid Contour than it is to the lightest shade in the Liquid Contour. So that's the reason that I wanted to pick up the deep one, because I felt like it would be more suited as a contour to fair to medium skin tones. As it compares in size and in shelf life, the Flower Beauty one has a 6-month shelf life, where the Charlotte Tilbury has a 12-month shelf life. The one from Flower Beauty actually comes with a little bit more product than the Charlotte Tilbury, even though the component itself is slightly smaller. This one comes with 0.47 ounces and the Charlotte only comes with 0.4 fluid ounces. So the Flower Beauty Spotlight Liquid Highlighter is not exactly the same shade as the one that I have in the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk Beauty Light wand. I have mine in the shade Pillow Talk, and the Flower Beauty one is in the shade Opal. So this is going to pull more like champagne, and this one is going to pull more pink. So they're not exactly the same color, but of course Flower Beauty is duping the Charlotte Tilbury. It's the same size. It's slightly bigger than the Charlotte at 0.47 ounces. There is the one in Opal from Flower Beauty, and there is the one from Charlotte in Pillow Talk. The Charlotte Tilbury actually had a little bit more pigmentation. It's a little bit more opaque. This is more of a highlighter. This could almost be used as a light blush because it has so much pigmentation. This one felt like a heavier consistency when I was putting it on, and the Flower Beauty one felt a little bit more sheer, as you can kind of see in the swatch. I think with the lights the way they are, the Charlotte definitely looks more reflective than the Flower Beauty one does, but of course some of that has to do with the overall shade of it. So I've actually done my brows and my eyeshadow. I did use one of my Flower Beauty eyeshadow palettes for the shimmer. I use the Desert Light ones. I love these. I have both this one and the other shimmer palette that she has. I just think these are like such good quality drugstore shimmers. Like they beat some of my high end in terms of formula. So I absolutely love these. I like having both of them in my collection. So let's move on into the primers because I haven't done anything for my base yet. So I think what I want to do is like a side-by-side for the dupes on these. I want to use the Skin Smoothie primer from Flower Beauty on this side and then the Skin Smoothie primer from First Aid Beauty on this side. I'm going to take about that much and just apply it everywhere. I have used this once before in my like testing new drugstore makeup. I quite like it. There's very few like Flower Beauty products that I don't like, except when it comes to the foundation. I did not like the Get Real serum foundation. It was just kind of too watery and too oily, and it would always like separate. Even when I went to CVS, a lot of them were kind of separating in the bottle. So I didn't pick up another one because I did declutter that foundation. So even though this calls itself the Glow Primer, it's just a very, very light glow. It's not heavy at all. It doesn't have any shimmers or sparkles in it. I think it's really pretty. I think it's very hydrating. I've used it with one other foundation and it played really well with that foundation. It was the L'Oreal True Match Super Blendable Foundation, but that one seems to work with a lot of different primers. It's not tacky or sticky. It just seems to like really absorb into the skin very nicely. I'd be interested to see the other primers that she has, the mattifying and then the Hydra Pop one. So let's go ahead and use the First Aid Beauty on the right side. Just gonna use about that much on this side. This one is definitely, as you saw, a little bit thicker of a formula. The consistency is just a little bit more textured. It's just a little thicker. There it is on the right side. And then there's the Flower Beauty. This one takes a little bit longer to dry down, so it's not fully dried at this point, but they feel just as hydrating. I don't notice like a difference once they've dried down. They feel very similar. The Flower Beauty one does have a shelf life of 6 months, whereas the one from First Aid Beauty has a shelf life of 12 months. The First Aid Beauty one does come with 50 milliliters, as where the Flower Beauty is 1 fluid ounce or 30 mils, so it's slightly smaller. This might seem like a silly dupe to some people, but I really didn't think so. When I saw the name, I immediately thought of the First Aid Beauty Skin Smoothie Primer. Additionally, when I saw the color of this, when I first got the Flower Beauty one, and it was slightly pink, and I know that the First Aid Beauty one came in like a very light pink shade, so immediately I thought to myself, oh, okay, so similar naming, similar color, this must be duping the First Aid Beauty one. So like I said, I do not have a Flower Beauty foundation, so I'm just gonna throw on another drugstore one. This one I'm still testing. It is new to me. I think it released in January. This is the Revlon Skin Caring Foundation. So I'm just gonna throw this on really quickly and then we'll come back and play with some of the other products. Okay, the foundation is on. It's a very like illuminating but natural looking foundation. So I've tried this now 3 or 4 times and I actually really do like it. I don't think it's over dewy. I think the first time that I tried it, it was a little bit. It seems to be set down easily with a powder and then it doesn't remain sticky, and I just kind of like this medium, light to medium coverage. And I love that it's such a lightweight formula that it doesn't break apart on my nose. So I'm quite enjoying that. But I want to go into her new concealer. This is the Get Real Serum Concealer. I quite enjoyed her Light Illusion Concealer. I did end up decluttering it because it just got on the older side. I do think that as time went on, I think the product did go bad and it ended up starting to like crease under my eyes, where when I first purchased it, it didn't. So it was a really good one, but I've tried this and I think this is better. When I got this, I thought it was going to be a very light or medium coverage concealer because it's the Get Real concealer, which follows with the Get Real foundation. And that's just like a whisper of coverage, just very, very light. But this is a very like medium to full coverage concealer, and it's not drying or creasing. I have loved reaching for this concealer. I just think that it's really easy to blend. It doesn't crease. It gives me, like I said, medium to full coverage. It's medium right away. Can you see the difference? And I think it could be built up. I haven't tried to build it up yet, and I don't think you need to. Like if you like something that's medium to full coverage, I think that it's perfect just the way it is with the amount that I applied. But you could go in. I'm just always hesitant to because I feel like it starts to crease under my eyes when I go in with more than one layer. But I think you could even build it up. It's just not something that I need to do for my personal preferences. But I think it's like brightening and lifting. Like it's such good coverage. It seems so dramatic compared to some of my other medium coverage concealers that I'm just enjoying this so much. It's even really been nice for spot concealing. I think this is probably going to become one of my favorite concealers in my collection, not just for drugstore, but simply because this offers such good coverage, but it's so easy to blend and it's very creamy and doesn't crease. It just does the job. I think it's formulated really, really well. I'm really liking that. I do not have a Flower Beauty setting powder, so I'm just going to go ahead and powder with my e.l.f. powder. This is just the Camo powder foundation, but I do like it for lightly setting all over the face. Okay, so let's move into the liquid contours. As you saw in the video, I did pick up all 3 shades of the contour. They had one of each at my local CVS, and so I thought I need to get all 3 of them because when I was looking at the light shade, it's very, very light. I think it's pretty neutral as opposed to the medium, which has a little bit of warmth to it, but I don't think that it was close enough to the Charlotte Tilbury to really be a dupe in the lightest shade. And I'm a good test, I think, because I have fair to light skin, and this is made for the range fair to medium, which I always thought was kind of a big jump. How can you have something that works for fair, light, and medium in a contour? Obviously, these were made to be a dupe for the Charlotte Tilbury. Like I said, Tarte is also coming out with these. Milani came out with one. A lot of brands are duplicating the success of these. They're becoming wildly popular, and I don't think that it's a bad idea. One of the criticisms that I have of the Charlotte Tilbury is that it is pretty dark for my fair skin, and while everybody loves this, I think I have to be careful how heavy I go in with this particular product because I find that I have to do kind of one area at a time because it starts to look a little bit muddy, and I actually have to work a little bit harder to get it to work for my fair skin. I'm not exactly sure which shade I want to go into. These are the closest matched as you saw on my swatches, but I feel like I definitely want to test the lightest version in the Flower Beauty contour wand. I think that's what I'll do, at least on the cheeks, and then on the forehead I will maybe test the one that's in deep and see how that compares to the Charlotte because they're more closely matched in color. So let's just go into this one. I'm going to apply it to the cheeks and blend it out with a sponge. And of course, I'm just kind of like staying on the left side. See, I think this is a better color for a neutral tone for fair to light skin tones than the Charlotte Tilbury is. And that is so much easier to blend. I did see Makeup by Michaela putting this on and she had like a really hard time. I guess hers came out quite patchy and so she wasn't really enjoying this product, but that was really easy. That's a shade that's better suited for someone who's fair to light skin tones, which is also why I like the Tarte because it's just not as deep of a color, but I don't have any patchiness issues. I'm not seeing anything that was being picked up or moved around. It was set over powder, so I think it laid down quite nicely. I don't see any issues with this. And it's pretty much dried down at this point, which is something that I personally like. All right, let's go into the Charlotte on the other side, and I am just going to bounce it in with a different clean sponge. See how much deeper of a shade that is for something that's meant to be for fair skin tones? And then I'm always like, oh gosh, work quickly because I start to get this kind of like muddy mess. And I know these are wildly popular and can change how much you go into it. My criticism is though that for fair skin tones, I just feel like there should have been an extra shade in Charlotte's range. So there's the Charlotte and there's the Flower Beauty. Which one do you guys prefer? I mean, they're very similar. Charlotte's is already dried down. They each both have like a slight sheen to them, which is very pretty. I think Flower Beauty's just has a little bit more warmth to it, like a little bit more of a golden undertone. Charlotte's definitely pulls a little bit more neutral on me and maybe even a hint of red. I just think it has a tendency to look dirty on fair skin. I mean, what else can I say? Whereas this one, I think just looks a little bit more natural. And this is coming from someone with fair skin tone. And so, you know, someone with a medium skin tone that uses this because this is the lightest shade that they make may not find those same issues. So I quite enjoyed like the Flower Beauty one. And I honestly think the consistency is just a little bit thinner. And so it was much easier to blend in than the Charlotte. That may mean that it doesn't last as long, but I don't know that I mind that. Let's go into the deepest shade on my forehead just so that we can compare because these are the most similar in tone. Again, I'm going to take Flower on the left side. I'm going to use the same one that I used for the Flower Beauty side on my cheek and bounce it in. It was definitely easy to blend in. What I'm gonna say is, I think that this one that's in Deep mimics the fair to light color in Charlotte's. So let's go into the right side with the Charlotte. This is almost the exact same shade as the one from Flower Beauty in Deep. They're just so similar when you blend them out. The only difference that I can really see in this one is definitely a thinner formula, so it blended a little bit easier, and it has a gold undertone, whereas the Charlotte has a red. But aside from that, it's like almost the exact same when it comes to Flower Beauty's deep shade and Charlotte's fair to medium. So I'm actually quite excited that Flower Beauty has a different shade range, and then the light version, I think, works a little bit better for actual fair skin tones. I do not have a Flower Beauty blush anymore. I did have the Flower Pots one, but I picked up a shade that was just very, very shimmery, so I ended up decluttering it. I am gonna use my Flower Beauty brush. I love this brush for blush. It's just the right amount of like dense and tapered. I'm just gonna go in with a powder blush because we're gonna use the liquid highlighter next. All right, let's move on into the highlighters. As far as comparing the highlighters, I'm really just looking for like consistency. It's not going to be the same tone because I do have my Beauty Light Wand highlighter in the shade Pillow Talk in the Charlotte Tilbury, and I picked up the shade Opal, the liquid highlighter for Flower Beauty. It's going to be more about the finish, the texture, and really the consistency of comparing these two. So I'm just going to draw on with the Flower Beauty on the left side, and I'm gonna tap it out with the clean part of my sponge. This one is like staying where I put it. Like it's not really blending in, which means it dried down like almost immediately. So you have to work really fast with this because it's not blending in at all. Ooh, this is tough. This is like really immovable. It is not blending in with my sponge. It legitimately looks like a stripe exactly where I laid it. I drew it on and it was almost impossible to like blend out, and I kept building it up to see if I could get the product wet again, wet enough so that I could move it around, but it didn't really. Mind you, I have a scar on this side, so you're gonna see that a little bit. In terms of the finish of it, it's more natural looking. It doesn't have glitters in it. It doesn't have like shimmers in it. It's not drawing a weird cast necessarily. The problem is it looks like I drew it on. It looks exactly like the stripes that I put on my face. It just didn't blend in at all. Don't know if I'm gonna be like the biggest fan of the highlighters. It was very tough to blend in. Let's go with the Charlotte in Pillow Talk on the right side. And I'm just gonna use the clean part of the Charlotte sponge. Honestly, the Charlotte is kind of doing the same thing. It dries down so quickly that it's just not blending in. It looks like a literal stripe on my face. They're both doing the same thing. They're both not like playing well with this particular powder blush, to be honest. Actually, I got it to like move around a bit, much more than the Flower Beauty one. So there is the Charlotte and there is the Flower Beauty. You guys, when it comes to the liquid highlighters, I actually have to say that the Charlotte takes it for me. It's just so much more light reflecting. It looks a little bit more natural. It doesn't look like I drew it on my face. I think the Charlotte blended in a little bit better. It just has kind of a nicer finish. It's not casting anything the way that this one in Opal kind of is. If I turn it this way, it's a very stark line, whereas the Charlotte, because I was able to blend it in a little bit better, it looks like more of a consistent like fluid finish to it. Holding these the wrong direction, but overall I actually think that the Charlotte does a better job with the highlighter. I do not have a Flower Beauty mascara, so I'm going to throw on my Lash Princess mascara, and then we'll come back and we'll do a final wrap up of everything. Okay, for the final wrap up, you guys, as the Flower Beauty compares to the First Aid Beauty Skin Smoothie Primer, I actually think this is a little bit thicker in consistency, so it's a little bit more hydrating. I like that this is a little bit of a thinner formula because it will play with other foundations a little bit more easily than something that's a little bit thicker, but if you're looking for something for more hydration, I think you're actually gonna get this from the First Aid Beauty one. I think that this is pretty, and so far it has played really nicely with the two foundations that I have paired it with. Again, I just like that it's a very light consistency. I would be interested in trying the one that is the Hydro Pop to see how it compares to this, because it is also called the Skin Smoothie like Hydro Pop primer, and maybe that one is more closely matched to this one. I don't think that this is overly glowy, and I like that. So overall, I don't think that they're an exact match, but I do think that it is a good product and I like it just as much as the one from First Aid Beauty. I just want to throw this in as a bonus, you guys. These are tremendous formulation from Flower Beauty. They are some of the best shimmers that I have in my collection, and not just in Drugstore. So highly enjoy these. I'm gonna also throw in the concealer as well. You guys, this is becoming like one of my favorite Flower Beauty products to grab for. I just think that this is an overall great formulation. It's so much more coverage than a lot of my concealers in my collection right now, and it never creases. I'm just thoroughly enjoying this. I think this was a really good launch. Okay, so back into some of the other dupes. I'm gonna say with the contour wand, I'm preferring the one from Flower Beauty more than the Charlotte. And that may not be the case for every single skin tone. I think medium skin tones would like the Charlotte just a little bit better, because I think this medium one on my swatch pulled a little bit warm and the Charlotte is more neutral. What I like in the light one is that I think it's actually more decently suited for fair skin tones, to be quite honest. Whereas this one, they probably should have gone like down a shade. And you may not agree with me on that, but I do kind of find that this one looks a little deep and a little bit muddy. In terms of blendability, I think the Flower Beauty ones were just a little bit lighter in consistency, and so they blended out a little bit easier. I think the deep shade is probably the best dupe for the fair to medium in Charlotte Tilbury. They looked almost identical on the forehead. So I think that's kind of interesting. In terms of the highlighters, I prefer the Charlotte. Hand over hand, I just didn't like the way that this highlighter blended out. I preferred how much more natural and easy the Charlotte was to blend in. This one was just giving me issues, and I applied it like 2 or 3 times and it still looks like just a stripe on my cheek. And the Charlotte from this distance and my poor eyes just looks like very wet on the cheeks, whereas this one actually looks like I tried and I applied a highlighter. So I cannot say that I enjoy the liquid highlighter at all. I prefer the Charlotte Tilbury much more. But that is it, you guys. That is all my Flower Beauty new releases and some of the dupes. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day wherever you are. I hope you're having a fantastic new year so far, and I will catch you all in my next video. Bye guys.